6th of Heartfire, 4E201, Day 21. My coat is finished, and I am now the proud owner of a very warm set of fur-lined accessories. Our work was complete by lunchtime, so I finally had some time to spare. I decided to spend the day lounging around the Bannered Mare, catching up on some reading and writing. In a strange turn of events, it appears I may have found a traveling companion. Uthgerd, a local woman whom I've seen frequenting the tavern in a full set of steel armor, goaded me into a fisticuff today. Under normal circumstances, I would never lower myself to such activities. Smashing fists in people's faces and rolling around on the floor are definitely beneath me, and there are much better ways to resolve differences of opinion. But it must have been the weather, being stuck inside for so long, mingling with the bloodthirsty Nords. Something made me snap today. Every time I've passed Uthgerd in the inn, she has made an insulting comment about my tender Imperial sensibilities. She insinuates that I'm good for nothing except tending some man's house, children, and bed. Today, she told me that my head is full of tundra cotton, and she suggested that I stop wasting my time trying to be smart and find a man to take care of me before I get old and fat. Without thinking, I slapped her hard across the face before the words were barely out of her mouth. She retaliated with a full-on swing, which I was able to duck. A heated rage bloomed inside me, and still in the duck, I rammed my head and body full force into hers. My blow knocked the wind from her lungs, and she doubled over. I continued pummeling her with my fists, releasing every ounce of anger that had been building inside me since Helgen. It didn't take her long to recover and begin swinging back. After some minutes of dancing back and forth, exchanging blows, I roared with a fierceness I never knew existed within me, and let loose with the hardest punch I could muster. Uthgerd was knocked to the floor, breathless and staggering. I stepped back and lowered my bloodied fists, awareness immediately flooding my face with shame. What in oblivion had gotten into me? And then came the sickening realization that I had just picked a fight with someone who could easily pummel me into a pulp. I watched with dread as she came to her feet, expecting at any moment that this seasoned warrior would draw her sword and run me through. Instead, the most amazing thing occurred. She looked me straight in the eye, put one hand on my shoulder and the other over her belly as she burst into a full, deep laugh. "That's the best fight I've had in years," she said. "If you ever need another blade at your side, just ask." As she returned to her seat and the other patrons settled back to their places, my fear and dread subsided, and pain took their place. My hands throbbed. My face felt like it was on fire. I felt for my nose and luckily found it still in place. I had some blood trickling from a split lip, but nothing more serious, except the bruises I'm sure I will be wearing in the morning. I retreated back to my room, cleaned up at the wash basin, and sat on the side of the bed until my pulse stopped racing and my nerves settled. In those hours of washing, resting, and considering, I came to the conclusion that I should ask her to join me, but also that I needed to be frank with her. I cannot pay her, at least not yet. I will cover her room and board, and pay for her provisions when we travel. I will share any goods or treasures that we find, although there may not be much treasure since we are only on a scouting mission. I have no intention of delving into dungeons, caves, or ruins in search of shiny objects. There is simply not enough time to explore the places that we scout. Never mind that I lack the skill for doing so anyway. I hope that a simple, all-paid journey across the breadth of Skyrim will be enough to pique her interest. At this moment, I have nothing more to offer. 7th of Heartfire, 4E201, Day 22. After doing chores for Hulda, I approached Uthgerd about becoming my traveling companion. I can't bring myself to call her my guard, since I'm not able to pay her. She accepted readily, mentioning that she was always eager to test herself in battle. She has a house here in Whiterun and invited me to stay. She even offered her stock of supplies for our journey. I had a word with Hulda to thank her for everything she did to help me, and I informed her that I would be staying with Uthgerd from now on. She was gracious and gave me a motherly hug before I left. Her caring and concern reminds me of home. Uthgerd's house is modest but comfortable. We spent some time discussing plans while packing up supplies. She agreed that we should attempt another hunting mission that afternoon. When traveling in Skyrim, it appears that you can never have too many furs. Right on schedule, it started raining as we left town. But we held to our plans and ended up with 1 elk, 1 deer, and 2 wolf pelts. We also came across some mud crabs, surprisingly vicious little things. They yielded some meat and shells, which we collected. I was able to pick a few more herbs, but after a few hours we were drenched and very cold. We headed back to Uthgerd's house for the evening. Over dinner, Uthgerd admitted that she had attempted to become a companion, but was denied entry to their ranks. Apparently, they think she is too hot-headed. During one of the initiation tests, she fought one of their members, to his death. She claims it was an accident, yet admitted that she lost control. I'm a bit afraid of her, to be honest. Maybe I will feel more comfortable as we spend more time together. At Uthgerd's urging, I have agreed that it's time to venture out. It is 3 weeks to the day from Helgen. I finally have enough coin to buy a horse, and we have a decent stock of provisions. We plan to make for Riverwood in the morning, after I buy a horse, and hopefully take the road from there to the border gates before nightfall. That seems to be the most logical place to start mapping. I've packed up stocks of vegetables and the meat we gathered today. We will need to refill our water bags and collect wood for a campfire, but that should be easy enough to accomplish along the way. 8th of Heartfire, 4E201, Day 23. Sweet divines, it's cold! Uthgerd and I made it to the Cyrodiil border and have made camp just north of the gate. We are now sitting in our fur tent in front of a crackling fire, having finally thawed out after almost freezing to death on the way. It is good that Uthgerd insisted on bringing several bottles of mead. It helped to keep our blood warm. In this climate, I can understand why Nords drink so much of it. We gathered a few more wolf pelts during the day. These Skyrim wolves are aggressive. I suppose they don't have the luxury of being selective about their prey. Although I don't enjoy killing them, I'll admit that the combat practice is good for me. It also gives me a feeling of added security to know we have some extra pelts available. 9th of Heartfire, 4E201, Day 24. We awoke to a blizzard. I could barely spend a few minutes outside the tent without my extremities going numb. I spent most of the day chopping extra wood to feed the fire. If this fire goes out, we are dead. On one of my wood chopping excursions, I found a trail. I went back to camp to warm up and get Uthgerd. We followed the trail to a cave called South Fringe Sanctum, which was guarded by a spell sword mage. He attacked without warning, startling me, but Uthgerd charged in and felled him with 2 swings of her greatsword. Bile rose in my throat as the snow began to turn crimson with his blood, and I quickly turned away. Inside were more spell swords, and again Uthgerd took care of them herself while I tried to ignore what was happening. But then 3 of them rushed us at the same time, and I was forced to fight for my life. Between my now trusty flames and still pathetic sword skills, I took down one and started on a second before Uthgerd finished him off. In the heat of battle, I didn't think twice about taking his life, but once it was done, I doubled over and heaved in the dirt until my insides were sore and my throat raw. It still makes me nauseous to reflect back. I am not cut out for bloodshed. During our exploration of the cave, we came across a nest full of huge, hairy spiders. They were hideous. These I had no qualms about killing. We found a necromancer caught up in one of the spider webs. After cutting her free, she told us that the cave was home to a band of dark mages led by a warlord named Bashnag. He had punished her for leaving the coven to seek her daughter. Upon her return, he placed a curse on her which blocks spellcasting. Although I cannot approve of her dark arts, I do feel pity for the woman. She was unable to find her young daughter and knows not if she is dead or alive. We found Bashnag in the farthest reaches of the cave. He did not hesitate to blast a shock spell at us the moment he heard our footsteps. Uthgerd, true to form, charged into melee with him before I could stop her. His spells were powerful, but they were no match for her greatsword. He fell there, face down, in the dirt. It took all my concentration to ignore the body while we searched his lair. There was a chest with some gold, potions, and several interesting glowing weapons. Uthgerd says they are enchanted. I don't know much about enchantments, but I believe she might be right. After looting everything of potential value, we backtracked to the cave exit and ran for our shelter. Luckily, the fire was still burning. Such a welcome sight in this frigid land. Tenth of Heartfire, 4E201, Day 25. I had nightmares. Crimson on white, bodies torn asunder, cries of pain, the smell of char and death. It reminded me of Helgen, except this time I was the monster. The arrival of dawn was a blessing. The blizzard dissipated overnight, and we woke to clear blue skies. Extremely cold, but clear. After breakfast and packing up, we headed north along the road. A side trail to the west led to a large fort-like structure called Bloodlet Throne, which appeared to be abandoned. I picked some bright red berries that we found, Uthgerd calls them snowberries, until, after dropping one, they reminded me of blood on the snow. After that, we did not tarry. The place had an unwelcoming feel, and I did not fancy more bloodshed. We went back to the road and followed it north towards Fort Newgrad. A single bandit accosted us on the way, but Uthgerd took care of it. I remained on my horse, numb from the frozen air and morbid thoughts. Our fingers were so cold by the time we reached Fort Newgrad that we rode right in as soon as we spotted their fires. Unfortunately, rather than being held by Imperial soldiers that I had assumed, it was home to a gang of bandits. They did not care to share their fire with us, which led to further violence. I have learned to appreciate Uthgerd's hot-headed battle strategy. She took care of all but one, leaving me with the revulsion and guilt of just a single death. After warming up and looting their provisions, we followed a side trail off the road to Greywater Grotto. Inside this cave, we found a pack of wolves and a lone woman singing by a pool. Her song was beautiful, but sad. When I spoke with her, She would not identify the song, but did admit it was a lament. She herself was an ex-companion. It seems that she left the group because she would not complete their final rite of initiation, which she said required her to give up a piece of her humanity. Some of the things she said of the companions make me wonder if they are actually the heroes everyone believes. Traveling further down the trail, we came across a modest cabin called Greenwood Shack. As we rounded the corner, a horrifying sight met our eyes. 2 burned bodies huddled together against charred furniture. I turned away, fighting a wave of nausea, using investigation of the house as my excuse. Inside, I found a note which hints at their fate. It was a letter to the Jarl, describing the movements of a dragon back and forth above the shack. We waited and watched, eyes turned to the skies, but we did not see any sign of it. We did find a stray dog. Presumably he had belonged to the inhabitants of the cabin. I decided to adopt him. Although I hate having another mouth to feed, I watched that dog down 2 wolves before I could even knock an arrow. He may come in handy. Plus, he's awfully cute, and all alone in this unforgiving land. Curiosity got the better of us, so we decided to search for a path to the dragon's roost. We found a cave called Bone Chill Passage, which led right through the mountain. Not a very friendly place, as it was home to several wolves and was decorated with frozen bodies and skeletons. It seems disrespectful, but we searched the remains for any useful items. Call it survivalist instincts, but I don't think we can afford to pass by anything of potential use. The other side of the passage opened up to wide stone steps. At the top of the steps was a huge landing surrounded by ancient Nordic pillars. The Ancients' Ascent. I felt very uneasy being there, as if the dragon would swoop down at any moment. If that wasn't frightening enough, there was also a strange wall carved with runes at the far end of the landing. I swear by the gods that I could hear voices and feel drum beats when I got close. It frightened me so much that I hurried our party back through the passage and away from the site. Uthgar just gave me a wry look. She claims she didn't hear anything. I'm sure she thinks I'm a coward, but I'm glad she didn't say it. Once back on the road, we backtracked to scout the areas we missed on the south side of Helgen, and then we turned east. Night was falling, so we found a side trail flat enough to camp for the night.